So have you ever watched a podcast that has 15 different damn videos in it? Well, today's the day. I should have never have tried to do this out in the open of my house because literally everything in my house is not going the way it needs to go. But I'm going to get through this podcast. I don't care if I got to post 10 videos with it. So continuation, I'm at that church and I am trying to understand why my prayer is not working for my youngest brother and why he's still going down the path of drugs and destruction and doing the things that he is doing. I decide that it's probably best if I'm going to show this faith and be forward with it, that I need to become baptized in the Baptist faith. I've only ever been baptized in the Pentecostal faith this time, and I'm thinking now it's probably best if I do that. So it just gives that outward, showing of my faith in the church and faith in the Baptist denomination, and just to show maybe this was just the wrong way to go about this, but just maybe it was something I needed to do for my prayers to be heard more. So I get baptized in this church. It is not the same effect as it was when I was a child. It is not the same, baptisms are one of those things in my life that I literally can go to a baptism and I can get teared up. I feel like it's something that somebody does as their public show of faith. They are into it, they're emotional about it, they are committed to it, and it is something that has always brought happy tears to me. It was a good moment, but it was not the same revelationary moment for me as it was when I was a child getting baptized. Why that was is I think because I was not necessarily doing it for the right reasons, but it still meant a lot to me and I still had a good purpose. It just wasn't necessarily because I felt like I was saving myself or I was baptizing myself, because I had already been baptized, and I was pretty sure that if I had been baptized in the Pentecostal church, that God was okay with that. I didn't have to be baptized again, but it was part of the laws, bylaws, or whatever for the Baptist church. To be a member, you had to be baptized in front of the church. So that's what I did. I just went through the motions of being baptized. As I'm at this church, I'm enjoying my time. I'm going with my one of my brothers. My mom comes and visits sometimes. It's not a bad experience. I'm learning. I am always moved by the Easter story, and this particular preacher had just a very dramatic Easter story that I've always felt like that's how it should be told, because it wasn't like some sweet moment. It was horrible. It was a crucifixion, and this guy Jesus was treated horribly. So I felt like it should be portrayed that way, and this preacher was very good about doing this. So as I'm going through there, and I am now starting to become the person that I am going to mold myself into, in the fact that I am no longer going to put up with certain things. I am seeing some behaviors, I am seeing some things with family members, with other people, that I am just like, I am not putting up with this. So the pastor of this church that I'm going to has an affair. I'm not even sure if he had the affair with somebody in the church, somebody outside of the church. It didn't matter. It was just one of those things that you rely on this facility to teach you how to be better and do better things. And then something like this happens. Not that I think that pastors are not human, they don't make mistakes, but I just feel like there should be a higher sense of responsibility for them. And they should be able to be held accountable for some of these things that some people may think differently about, or how they are handled. And that is fine. That is fine. I understand that. I know there's several pastors out there who probably had affairs that came back, but at the time in my life when I needed to uphold my morals, one of my morals was that I needed to stick with what I thought was right. I did not feel good about going to a church where the pastor had an affair. It was very public, and it basically ruined their marriage. So I decided that it was probably time for me to back away from that just a little bit. I did do a little church shopping, which I really just didn't have a very good success for that. And I don't know if anybody's ever done that before, but sometimes that can be good, and sometimes it is absolutely a horrible experience, because you can tell the minute you walk in the door what the agenda of that church is. You can tell so easily, and I'm not going to necessarily go into detail about that because I don't want to make anybody think that I'm judging this church from this church. This is just totally my own experiences. But you'll go in there and how people greet you, the environment, what is happening. Sometimes you just know right away that you just kind of want to turn around and go back out the door, because you're like, this is just bullshit. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying just to, get me in there so they can just, get my money or whatever you believe for how they present to you. So I found a spouse who wasn't really impressed with organized religion for his own reasons. And he even refused to marry in a church. When we were looking, I couldn't really convince him to go and do any kind of church shopping. We just really didn't do that. And then when it was time to get married, he absolutely refused. He's like, I will get married anywhere else, but I am not getting married in a church. And I was like, okay. So I always thought, and with my first marriage, I had been married in church, which of course that didn't work. So what does that really prove exactly? Does every marriage that does the best happen in a church? No, absolutely not. That is not what happens. So I was like, okay, so I've got a good man. He understands my trauma. He's helping me build as a person. He's making things for me much easier. It wasn't a lifelong dream if I got married the second time in a church. So I was more than willing to do whatever he wanted to do, get married wherever he wanted to get married. As long as we were together, that's all that really mattered as far as I was concerned. So we got married. We were married a couple years before we decided it was time to start to have children. And when we did, that just really wasn't anything I really thought much about until the children got here and got a few years older. And I was like, it is probably my responsibility to make sure that the children are getting some kind of a spiritual background for themselves. They need to be given that opportunity. That way they can make that choice for themselves later in life on what they want to do. So as the children came into our lives, I wanted there to be that strong foundation. And it was important to me for them to give them that option so that they could grow and decide what they wanted to do ultimately and choose their own path. I mean, I could give it to them just like my mom gave to me. Regardless of the situation we lived in, my mom still made sure we had that foundation and gave us the opportunity to choose how we wanted to lead our faith. So, and I appreciated that, and I wanted that for my kids. So I sat my husband down and I informed him that I would like to try one church in particular. I'd been looking at it. It didn't matter if he came or if he didn't come. Me and my daughter were going to go to church. It was a church that was one that had some old family involvement in it for himself because he lived in the area, and that it would have some connection there. There would be some of that already going. So I went a few weeks by myself with my daughter. It was one of the older Baptist church bases, probably more like the church that I went to in Lake City. They did the hymnals. They, had the choir. It was a beautiful, smaller country church. And it seemed to be just what I felt more comfortable with my child, because I was very much that person who did not trust people, who did not, I just didn't want strange people being around my children. And I did not like big crowds. This church was not a huge church. So it was, it worked out fine for what we needed. Now, we went there for a few years, but of course, we're all human and human things happen. But as I'm getting older and now I have children, my morals to me and what I think is right and wrong is even stronger based. And I am trying to be that person who is there for their kids, giving them what they need, trying to help them with their spirituality, but also not telling them there are certain things that are just not right in the world. And it's up to us to make sure that those things are addressed. So some of the downfalls of this church was the accountability of the church to address a deacon of the church who was involved in domestic violence. So we knew this was happening. We went to the pastor, we addressed it, and basically he told us it was none of our business. So the problem with the community, the problem with the whole thing of domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, everything under that umbrella, what's wrong with that is because nobody has the balls to stand up to say, this is not right. So me and my husband, who I do believe is the leader of my household, we go to the pastor together. He speaks first. I feed in my information because I am a very emotional person. He knows this. He's doing the most of the speaking. He's speaking very well. He's saying what he believes, how he believes. He says, I'm not saying that the deacon needs to be kicked from the church. I'm saying he needs to step down from his position. He needs to be counseled on what is happening in the home, and you need to help them. And we're basically told that it's not our business. It is our business. When somebody comes to church and you can see the bruises on someone and you know what's happening to them, everybody knows what's happening to them. It's not a secret. If your pastor isn't holding you accountable, who is holding you accountable? If the members of your church are not there to protect you, who is there to protect you? So we left that pastor's office. We never came back to that church again. It was important when we got into the vehicle. I was just very frustrated, but I was going to let my husband lead in how it was going to be are we coming back to this church? How are we going to deal with this? And he says, I don't think it's a good idea for us to come back to this church. I don't think it'll be productive for either one of us to be here knowing that they're going to let that kind of stuff go on without something being addressed. Huge sigh of relief, because he was on the exact same page that I was. This is not where we needed to be. This is not where we wanted to raise our child to make a difference in our lives. It just wasn't something that was going to be productive for us. So we started church shopping again. Now, I think we did this mainly because probably more me feeling guilty. I wanted her to have that basis. I wanted her to know. Like when you get to an adult and you can make that decision about how you want to lead your spirituality, whether you do or you don't, I feel like knowledge is power in every subject, including religion and spirituality. You should be giving that opportunity to do and be exposed to as much as you possibly can. And then you, as an adult who has the right to do whatever the hell you want, can do that. But I needed to know as a parent that I gave that opportunity. I let them flourish in how they were going to need to be and make their decisions according to the information that I gave them. So we found a group after going to several different little churches and nothing really working out. We found a group that was actually kind of having church out of their home, and their purpose with the life groups was to have these groups in the home, and then eventually once we gathered more and more people, we would start, we'd get a building and start a church. So we had come into this group through another church, and we had decided that we were going to participate in this. We liked the one-on-one. I liked the small groups. I liked the fact that I would be able to keep an eye on my child when she was participating in kid activities in the same home where I was. I liked that. I liked the fact that I was going to know who the people were that, as we were growing and getting to the point where we could start that church. It was nice to see the process too of starting a church and seeing what kind of work was into that. I just had never been a part of that. I know that churches get started and grow up every day, but that was not something that I had been a part of. I also wanted to be a part of the youth ministry. I wanted to be a part of their security. That was important for me to know that my children were checked in, they were where they were supposed to be, and that the correct person was picking them up. That was important to me. So that was something that I was really impressed pressed with when this church got bigger and went into a church home where we had to have children go to the youth ministry. They needed to have a safe way to do that. And that was important. That was something that was important. So, as we're going on with this, we're starting to see some things that we were not particularly fond of. During the building of this church, we came across different behaviors and different agendas that we felt were not really lining up with what we wanted to see being a family. And some of that was sexual advances. My husband actually had sexual advances made to him from single people who were coming to help to build the church. Now that's very discouraging when you have to deal with, as a wife of childhood trauma, you have to deal with the fact that your husband's going to work at this building without you, and you know that this person has made these advances to them, and you also are aware that there is some stuff that is going on between other people that is in the same line as what's happened to your husband. So, and I'm thinking, okay, so this is just a phase. I'm trusting my husband to do what's right, to put in what he feels like needs to go into the building of this new church. And I continue to see different other things like false teaching. I'm seeing people speak about one thing and really act fired up about it, but they're not presenting themselves like that over here. A little bit of hypocrisy, I guess you could say. They're doing this over here and then you're suspecting this over here. I had a couple people in particular that I was a little nervous about in how they were approaching their involvement with children's and youth ministry, especially some of the, like the traveling with the kids. Like when you got somebody that particularly is like obsessed, and I'm not talking about your fun youth pastor who is fired up for God, and you know who I'm talking about. Like they are like, this is it. This is what I'm made for. This is how this is. We're talking about the groomers. We're talking about the creepy ones. We're talking about the ones that are progressively showing that behavior, that if you're from childhood trauma, you seem to zone in on that just a little bit quicker. I'm starting to see some of those. And of course, as the church gets bigger, we are progressively letting more and more people in. And the whole purpose is come as you are. We don't care what your background is. And I am fine with that too, as long as it does not affect my child or anybody else's child with your behaviors. And I'm sorry, but I cannot sit next to a pedophile at church. I'm just not doing it. If God wanted me to forgive pedophiles, he would have made me a different entity. He would have made me an angel. He would have made me some type of supernatural entity. He wouldn't have made me a human who was molested by her father and then lived life trying to forgive. That's just, if that's what God wanted me to do, then he should have made me differently. Instead, he gave me the mind. He put me in the situation and gave me the resources that I had. So now I am who I am. And one of those things is I can't do that with pedophiles. It is not going to happen. I do not believe they can change. I do not believe they can be rewired or medicated or whatever the hell else, some excuse somebody has for why they are the way they are. I just can't. And I'm not going to, and I'm definitely not going to tolerate that in church. Lots of infidelities. As the church got bigger, the more and more infidelities that went on within this church were extraordinary. And the fact that so many of them just didn't even try to hide it. It just was, like this person's sleeping in this person and this person is in this band and this person's doing this. And I'm just like, my goodness, are we not having some kind of control as it gets bigger? And when somebody would fall out in their family life or whatever it was and not come to the church, they weren't reached after. And we were also those people. We had a fallout among ourselves at home. We helped to build a church that we were with for 5 years. And when we had a major marriage fallout, where we thought our marriage was not going to survive it, nobody from that church reached out to us. Nobody noticed that we came to church less and less, that we stopped tithing, that we stopped doing the things that we withdrew from the youth ministry, that we were stopping volunteering to help repair things. My husband literally can repair anything. He just was pulling away from that. And the more we pulled away from that, the less we had any kind of response from church that needed to reach out to us at a time when our faith was failing. The church was proving just what road we were going down was probably the road that we were going to stick to because of the response that we got, which was no response at all. There were some pedophiles that were called out among the church. Well known in the area. We had a girl who could literally identify things on this man when he was naked from when they took a youth trip, and he molested her. Is he in jail? No, he's not in jail. In fact, he moved off somewhere and married some young girl from a country off that probably didn't even know any different, that he was probably molesting when she was younger. But yes, here he is, out living his life, just doing his thing. And I felt like the church should make a public, you should be, honestly, if you've listened to my podcast, if you've been on my TikTok, I think pedophiles should go through a wood chipper. I have no problems with that. They should be publicly shunned. They are doing stuff to people that changed them their entire lifetime. And they are just let go to do it to more people. And sometimes I think churches just let those people move on, do their thing, so they don't have to get that reputation. How would you like the reputation of a church that actually gave a fuck about some of their people and actually held child abusers, domestic violence offenders, sexual assault offenders, held them accountable, said, no, you cannot come in this church because this church is here for protection of our weakest, our women, our children, our men that need to be protected. If you need God, you need to find God in your own way. And I'm sorry, I know that sounds harsh, but I have a broken mind that I literally will have to deal with my entire life. After all these years, I still have to deal with the choices of my father and all the times that nobody held him accountable. I'm the one that has to deal with that. He's off doing whatever he does, and this pedophile from church is off doing what he wants to do with his new bride. Left his wife and children. Several children, not one child. He had several children. And he just was able to go off and do his thing and hush-hush at the church. What does that do for somebody like me? It puts a very sour taste in their mouth. Because I'm like, why, if our God is so mighty, is this kind of stuff happening? Why can I not pray? And that pedophile be hit down by lightning. I just was not understanding why my faith and what my morals were saying was lining up. Stuff just wasn't lining up for me. I felt like there was some rejection of people who were seeking refuge, people who were in domestic violence situations, people who were trauma-based. They talked a big talk like they were going to be that kind of church that was there for people like that until those people came and they were the wife of somebody in the band, or they were the wife of one of the higher ups in the church. And all of a sudden, that woman had no credibility. Oh, it's mental illness. Oh, she's sleeping around. Oh, whatever the fucking excuse was. That excuse was there, and it just proved more and more that as this church got bigger and bigger, their values weren't any different than any other secular person that was out there. It was just all about what people were seeing and what they were perceiving on that Sunday morning or whatever day they came through. But if they really got into the depth of what was going on with that church, they might have realized that there was a lot of shit going on, which I'm sure there is. Humans are shit stirrers. And just because they're in church doesn't mean I mean, I would just put some money on the table that there isn't one church in America that there's not a pedophile sitting in it. And I'm going to guess that that pedophile might even be on the board or might even be doing something with youth, because this is what pedophiles do. They look for these environments who overlook that type of behavior. They let them in, they let them around their children, and then they all act fucking surprised when something happens, somebody gets molested or something goes on. But they don't hold them publicly accountable to the point that they should be, to let them know, don't bring your shit to my church. I have people here that I need to protect. I am going to say that this church will not tolerate domestic violence. We will not tolerate this type of behavior. If you come to me and say, I am a man, I have physically abused my wife, I know this is wrong, I do this when I drink, I need you as a church to help me be a better man, help my wife to forgive me, help me to do what needs to be done to be better, then I have respect for you. I have respect that you are publicly as a man coming out and saying that I am a shit. I have fucked up and I need to do better. Then as a church, they should gather around that husband and wife, assuming that the wife wants to stay and that it is something that she wants to be a part of. And it's not like a lifelong, there's always exceptions to every rule. I think every case needs to be looked into. But if he is somebody who is remorseful, okay. But don't bring no damn pedophile up to that pulpit, that stage, that microphone, and try to act like we're supposed to forgive him. Fuck that. He can go outside in the alley and get in the old wood chipper, and then God can make that decision what he wants to do with them, because I do not have that capability in doing that kind of stuff. Misdirected funds. I felt like things were happening and people were gaining wealth that wasn't necessarily church-based. When you help start up a church, it's good and it's bad. And sometimes it's bad because you see things happen that shouldn't be going on. And this was more of my husband noticing this than me, because I'm all about behaviors and attitudes and what is happening with the people. My husband is the paper and pencil guy. He is the very logical thinker. So he was like, I don't like that we're getting this kind of money in for tithing, but we're not seeing this, and this done. We need this and we need this. And why is this being done instead of this? Do you understand? Just like, and I don't have any specifics that I would like to, because, I'm not saying that necessarily those people are the worst of the worst, but I just feel like sometimes when you get involved with starting a church, you're going to see some of those things. And it just adds to, that's not the worst of what happens in a church, but it adds to all the other things that are on your list of things that are causing you to doubt your faith, causing you to have doubt in religion and the church body itself. You start to see some favoritism. So, whether it's in promotions of how people are dealt with in the church, or how things happen, sometimes you're seeing things that people are getting favoritism because they're basically just kissing ass. And I'm like, this is not really a workplace. I know sometimes it's built like that, and sometimes you got to have that foundation, but I'm like, so you're picking this person to do this construction because of whatever reason, but the guy who helped build the church, the main contractor, you're telling him that he's not good enough now? Like, all that time that he volunteered, now you're going to pay this other contractor to do stuff? That kind of stuff just didn't make any sense to us. Particularly my husband really pissed him off. And sometimes I think that toxicity of church was actually causing us some marital conflict, because we might actually see things in a different way. My husband grew up differently than I did. he originally was not fond of going to church at all when we got together. So he had a little bit different way of looking at things and thinking about things than I did. I came from a trauma home. I was very much looking at different aspects of the church and how I felt comfortable and not comfortable with it. But that caused some conflicts between us because he may have seen something that he didn't like, and I just kind of just didn't see the point and why he was so upset about it, and vice versa. So that caused us some conflict. But of course, as we go, and we are now becoming to the point where we are seeing these things are starting to add up, and we're starting to have some conflict in our own marriage. We are now part of the lost sheep, and we are not being seeked. They're not coming to our house. Nobody's calling. Nobody's checking on us. We are at the lowest part that we have experienced our entire married life together, and we have no support from the church we helped build. It was shitty, and it really started to weigh on the fact that I was praying, nothing was changing. I was going to church, nothing was changing. Things were just not changing like I thought for somebody who was being faithful to God and to church. I was starting to see that. The church had grown so big, so fast, that the originals were basically forgotten about. So the people that had put in the initial work, the bare bones of, building this church, building the congregation, getting things together to make sure that everything run, now they were starting to, the basic ones. We're not talking about the people that were the leaders in different groups and stuff. I guess I'm just going to wave at everybody. We're talking about, people like me and my husband who weren't, in leadership roles. But, we were starting to trickle out, and several of the originals were trickling out, including going through divorces, dealing with infidelities, dealing with alcoholism and drug addiction, and all the different things that they were going through. And those people were just kind of basically forgotten about. They just really didn't make the attempt because there were so many new people in there that could fill your spot. It's just, that is like the workplace. Like, basically, you could die on spot at work, and the next day they're going to have your job posted. Somebody else is going to come to fill that spot. And that's how that church was treating their original people. We were just going on about our business, and it wasn't getting any better for us. We were pretty much broken and discouraged. And we just didn't know how to do that. So one of the things we did is completely withdraw from church. We were not praying at meals anymore. We were not doing any of the things that we had done to come together as a family to be better. And unfortunately, our daughter could see that. She could see that perspective. Unfortunately, she was old enough to also make the discovery of all the negative things that were happening at church. And she was getting to the point where she was old enough to realize that some of this stuff was just bullshit, that we were being drugged through the system of religion and not getting the results that we deserve. We kind of decided together but separately that we were done with organized religion. We had been through many churches together through our married life, and even, through different stages, like helping build a church, being at an older church, being at a newer church, being at an established church, being at a church that was newly, brought together. And we had not gotten any satisfaction from our religion or our faith journey to continue on with that situation. It was actually affecting my PTSD more, bringing more into light, because that's an unfortunate thing with someone with trauma. So you have someone who goes through this as a child, and as they get older, if they are subjected to different negative moments, it just adds to that nice little pile of shit that their trauma, and then more shit, and then more shit, and then more shit. And then it just makes their PTSD in other moments a little harder to deal with. So we were now had several negative things to add to the shit pile of church experiences and religion. So the things that we decided was basically we were going to no longer do any church shopping. And we made this decision. We quit pretty much going to church in 2015. In 2016, we decided that therapy for our marriage was probably best. And one of the things we decided in 2016 that we were going to stay away from organized religion. It was not something that was positive in our lives and was not something that we were willing to risk ourselves, yet once again, to be out there to do what we felt like we could do at home. We could tithe if we wanted to. We didn't have to walk in those church doors. We didn't have to be rebaptized. We didn't have to do any of that stuff to be who we thought we needed to be for ourselves or for our spirit self, our beliefs, our religion. We didn't claim any type of denomination at this point. We were already non-denominational because we have a range of beliefs that we have gathered for ourselves to make religion make just a little bit more sense for ourselves. Some things that we have observed in my lifetime by Christians. Now, this is one of the things that probably was the hardest for me as somebody of trauma, is that sometimes I also experience moments where I am not mentally clear about things that are going on. I have mental illness. I have PTSD. I have severe anxiety that sometimes impairs me even from going to the Walmart. But I also have moments where I have to funnel my sadness, my depression in ways that are uncharacteristic for me. And sometimes the way people react to me during those moments also has affected my feeling towards religion. A few years back, I had a sibling that had a psychotic break. And during the psychotic break, we saw things from his mental illness that mirrored things that we saw from my childhood. He said some things, he did some things, and we found out about some things that just made the situation much worse. Made my PTSD very not in a good place. It was not a good place. It was at a peak that I had not seen since probably my children were very small, and it was very hard to deal with. My anxiety was terrible. My niece moved in with me, which also caused different set of conflicts that also made it hard for me to function and to do things like I would do every day. Like I would, just your everyday thing. People take so for granted just your everyday things like doing the dishes, vacuuming, keeping up your house, doing your podcast, getting on your TikTok, your Facebook. How about just being around family and friends? How about going to work? Have you ever been so mentally ill that you couldn't go to work because you literally cannot stomach the thought of walking out your front door? I've done that. So one winter in particular, I decided that I was at a low that I honestly can say that I have not been at in my entire life. It was the darkest low that I had ever been into, and something came into opportunity, and that was the fact I could do a weather report in my real self. I could be silly, I could speak how I speak and do the things that I do and do a weather report. Some people were very receptive to this. Some people were very cruel about this, and they did not understand ultimately what this was, which was a cry for help. I was severely depressed. I was very dark in my thinking, and instead of people reaching out to me, sometimes I'd have people say stuff to other people and they'd come to me, and other things that Christians would do just to confirm what I had already been on the road of thinking about since 2015, when I got away from organized religion. People were not responsive in the way that you would think that they would need to be. Now, I did have some people, there was some actual people that were like, okay, what's going on with this? Yes, you're outgoing. Yes, you're a social media person. But this is something, a whole different level. What is going on? Let's really talk about it. Only a couple people were like, okay, yes, we see you. We see you're struggling. We know this is something that's not something that you naturally do, but you're using your creativity to try to find a way to make other people laugh, because that is one of those things that I have always wanted to do, help people, make people laugh. It actually helps me to help someone else. It is just one of those things that I use to function. And instead of that, it kind of caused some more issues that I already, was following that path. People are really like, they project all this Christianity and they project all this, I'm going to this church, I do this and I do this. But then something happens to you that's real. Ooh, they back up. They're like, wait a minute. Ooh, I can't deal with that. She said fuck. She said whatever. Oh my gosh, she did this. Did she mean to do that? Let's not go to her directly and say, let's talk behind her back, or let's ask someone else to come to her and bring it to the attention, when all that does is cause damage. I'm one of those people, if there is something going on and you think that I need to be aware of it, please just come to me. I may cry and I may be sad about what is said, but I want your honesty, because if I have to hear it secondhanded, I just don't really think a lot about you, and I start to resent you. And I know that's probably, I don't know, is that something everybody does? But with my trauma brain, that is how it is. And once I start to think about you differently, it's hard for me to change that. I can't rewire how I think about you when I see your true colors. Now, come to me with your true colors to my face, and you're a whole lot more likely to be respected, because I will understand where you're coming from and why you're saying that. This is not high school, folks. This is not middle school. Come to me and be real. I don't like that churches or organized religion will cover up crimes and blame the weak. Stop this. Everybody knows, anybody that knows me knows that I am an advocate against domestic violence, against childhood abuse, and against sexual assault. I do not like those. I don't tolerate them. Do not victim shame and then act like it's okay. Nothing absolutely gets my ass more than when a victim comes forward against a pastor or a deacon or anybody in the church and nobody can believe that person. Nobody. Somebody doesn't just start offending. They're typically got those behaviors. You're going to see that from childhood. You're going to see that kind of stuff. They're going to be destructive from childhood. They're going to be a shithead. You're going to see that kind of stuff. So why do people act so damn surprised that, Bob, is beat his wife for 40 years and then he molests the little girl and but Bob, he drives the ministry bus and stuff. God, I cannot stand that shit. It makes me sick in my stomach. I cannot stand the way the churches and organized religion protect those people and how they shame the victims. Like, it should be a neon fucking sign in the front of a church that says, we do not protect criminals. We do not, and I know, God, we could go into this for 15 damn hours about what the Bible says and what it says about forgiveness and all this stuff. That is fine. I understand if that's the way you need to live, but that is not how my mind works. That is not how I was made. That is not how I was structured. And if God wanted me to be different, he should have done something differently in my life. I could have been, I think of the accomplishments and the things that I've done in my career, in my life, and the awareness that I have brought about this. Now, if I needed to be there, and that was my purpose, and if I had to change being without my kids and my husband, if I had a good childhood, I wouldn't change that. I just wouldn't. I adore my husband, I adore my kids, I adore my grandkids, and I would not change what happened to me for the first 13 years of my life or that after to do and be different now. But that's how I am. That's how I am now. So the fact is, I'm not going to forgive the pedophile. Have I forgiven my father? Maybe to some degree, but that's really for me. So if you need to forgive for you, if you need to forgive for whoever, that is your thing. It is not mine. I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. And if you think it's wrong for somebody to hate somebody and to carry that hate, I'm sorry, but that is what I do and what makes me go from day to day. And organized religion just has not proven to me in any fashion whatsoever that they are that passionate about protecting the weak. So that is just a moral that I have to stick to for myself, and what has made me decide to stay away from organized Christianity or religion. They're cruel. Churches are cruel. Christian people act cruel. They are rude. They think that they've got to understand that the world is so vast. There are people that have never even heard about religions. There is actually villages where people are still naked, running around doing their things, and some villages even eat other people. Okay? Like, if you don't know this, just Google it, for goodness sakes. There's stuff that's going on in this world. So when God does his rapture and comes back, what about those people? They haven't been saved. They haven't been whatever. Are they going to hell? Am I living in hell right now? I'm just saying. They're so fucking judgmental. They are so absolutely think that their way is the only way. I guess that's the way they're taught. I guess that's the way it is. Yeah. So if you believe it, that's fine. Now, I do know that there are people out there who claim to be Christians who are good people. They are kind, they are honest, they do exactly what they think is the right thing to do. And I love them for that. I love that they are faithful. I love that that is the path that they want to go to. And it is not my responsibility in any way to try to influence them that way. Because ultimately, in the end, whatever happens to my soul, whatever happens to whatever, if I go into an afterlife, if I get reincarnated into a cow, whatever happens, that's my responsibility. They also have their responsibility for how they feel like their soul needs to be tended to spiritually to get where they need to be. I talked about them being judgmental, of course, and hypocritical. My gosh, I have never seen hypocrisy more than in organized religion. My goodness, some of these, oh my gosh, some of these, like public, preachers and all their money, like the Osteen guy. Come on. What was it, the storm? Something happened and he wouldn't let people in their church. Really? Why do you have this? Why are you doing this if it's not for fame and fortune? Because it's not to save the people and to help the weak. I don't know. And I know they preach in the Bible. You sit with the sinners. But I'm going to tell you that a Christian will preach about forgiveness, not judging people doing this. But do you think that same Christian would sit their ass beside me or anybody else that's having a mental health crisis as I am throwing out fuck, shit, damn? Do you think they're going to do that? Because they're going to think that I'm not good enough to sit with them. So as somebody who has mental illness and who deals with that type of stuff, I have made the discovery that the less I put myself in that situation, the less likely I am to feel depressed. In fact, I probably am depressed half of the time that I was when I was in organized religion. And I think a lot of that is the guilt, even though I have a strong moral base. I am very much black and white. There's not a whole lot of gray for me. If you have slept with a minor, I'm done with you. I don't care who you are. You can be my brother, my father, my uncle, any of that. It does not matter. My best friend for 50 years. I'm not 50 years old, but you know what I'm saying. You could just be whoever. The best pastor that anybody's ever had, the best deacon, the best usher. I don't care. If you are molesting underage children, I don't give two shits about you, and let God deal with you. Because I can't. I literally cannot do that. That is not my job. That is not what I'm put here on earth for. And still don't even know. So all I'm doing is yelling out, awareness, that this shit's going on. That's all I know how to do because that's where I'm from. That's my foundation. I felt like in my lifetime, Christian people or people from organized religion hurt me worse than most of the other people. And why I say that is, back to the beginning, my father was a deacon at our church. He went to church, he did his thing, he spoke in tongues, and then he went home, he beat his wife, he raped his wife, he molested and sexually assaulted his daughter, and physically abused his children. Do you think that anybody at that church said, you know what? Maybe you need to step on down, friend. Maybe you need to get your shit together. We need to take care of your family because you are a demon. I mean, no more. People be talking about demons and all this stuff. Don't you think that it's a little odd that somebody who wants to have sex with their own daughter isn't the closest thing to a demon that we could possibly ever see in this lifetime? It's disgusting. It's fucking gross. Like, this is a person that you have made from your own DNA with another human. You've made this person. You've brought them into the earth. You're excited, though, the day they're here, like, you're holding this baby. Are you really thinking about having sex with this kid? Like, what the fuck? I mean, I just don't even understand what is going on up there. And you cannot tell me that that type of thinking can be changed and can be sent out there with children again. Abso-fucking-lutely not. And if you think like that, you're not my people. And that's okay. I don't have to be around you. I'm grown. I've got a great base. I have a strong husband with a strong mind who knows how to handle his woman with trauma, knows how to deal with her mental illness, and understands the cues, understands what needs to be done for life to be better. So I have flourished because of that, because I have made those choices, done different things, and landed with someone who can give me the support that I need and who also understands my spiritual journey at this point. I feel like a lot of times religion is the biggest force for guilt. People feel guilty because they can't keep up with the Christian ways, their Christian neighbor, the Christian family member, and also family members that guilt people about different things like going to church and going to, different things. And they don't feel like they can be whole or who they need to be if they aren't going to, sorry, I told you, this is a very interesting podcast. Just the guilt that they give people and acting like they can't, have themselves together if they don't do this. I would love to know how much of my family and friends really realize how long it's been since my husband and I have gotten away from organized religion. I would love to know how much of my friends and family actually know where my mind is and where my heart and soul is on the discussion of religion. I think it would probably shock some of them. I think it would shock some of my family to know and friends that I haven't prayed since 2015. I'm working on 10 years of not saying a prayer, not going to church, and not having any change in my morals, how I feel about people, how I think things should be handled. I have no change. So what does that say really? That says that I did not need that in my life to do what I needed to do to be a better trauma-based person. Now, With that being said, in my experience, there are people out there who depend very heavily on a spiritual journey and organized religion to help them with their trauma base. What do I think about that? I think it's awesome. I think if you can find what you need and you feel that special connection with the God of Christianity and you feel like that's where you need to be, then that is fantastic. That is awesome. I want you to thrive. I want you to do whatever you can to be the best that you can be. But I also want you to stick to your morals. Don't allow anybody in any church to tell you that you're not good enough, that because you're having a bad mental illness day, week, months, mine was months, that you have to do something different. So you can't tithe. Can you still go to church? Some bullshit churches say you can't, but you can. You can still go to church if you need to, and financially you can't do that. I have to give a shout out to my mom and dad's church. They go to a small country church who has been very good about ministering and reaching out to my mom and dad when they needed the help the most. My mom relies on them heavily for friendships and for doing things for the community that she feels like needs to be done. She feels called to that. And I understand that. And I love that they have that. That is not something that I have, and I don't miss it. And I don't even feel any pull, any need to be in that environment. And that's okay for me. I have my faith base. I know what is in the Bible. I have read most of it. I even took a class in college on the New Testament for religion because I felt like it would be a good thing to have to learn and to have experience. I went to the Ark in, I think it's Kentucky. Yeah. In Kentucky, there is a Ark that was actually made structurally and the size of what Noah would have made. It is amazing. If you ever get a chance, I do believe that the Bible is a book of history. It is telling a story of things that build up the Christian faith. It is a very important book. It is something that if it is of high value to you, then that is something that you need to have, something you need to read, something that you need to base yourself on. If prayer is important to you, by all means, pray your heart out. Give it all you want. Give it all you need. And if you see what you need from organized religion or Christianity or whatever religion you feel like is what needs to make you the better person, I say go for that. Because unfortunately, we're going to see some things too in religion, and that's where toxic people will turn to religion. And I think the problem with this is that pedophiles is, of course, the topic of so many of the trauma things because that's such an issue for me. If you have a place or have anywhere where children gather, pedophiles should not be allowed to gather there. That is why when you are a registered sex offender, you can only be so many feet away from a school, away from, places that organize children. Now, I'm not sure if churches are on that list, but I'm going to have to look that up because I would be interested in that because that is a place where kids gather. They should not be allowed to be within so many feet of that. And some churches are just like, come on, come as you are. That is fine. But there's some exception to every rule. God put these humans on this earth. They started killing from the very beginning. So do you think that all these years later this is going to change? No. There are some people that are born that are just not wired right. They are just not there. They are not the best people to have at church, and they should not be allowed at church. And there should be people that hold them accountable. And like I said, it's a great book of history. It should not be discounted. I think that when you go to like the Ark and they talk about the science facts of the Ark and how it worked, why it worked, it is spectacular. It is a great museum. Whether you're Christian, whether you're not, if you're a secular person, have never had any part of faith in your life, you should go see the Ark. Yeah, it is pretty freaking amazing. I mean, it just really is. And it has great science-based information in there that you're like, oh yeah, this makes so much sense. I mean, this is science-based stuff. And what I liked about going to the Ark is the realty of it. Don't give me Christian religion and give me a white Jesus. He wasn't white, for heaven's sakes. They were from the Middle East. He was not white. He was dark. He was not this white Jesus that people see on their walls. And that is not how they portrayed it. And I appreciated that, because I don't want to go see some bullshit. It is a book of history. Give it to us real. And that's how you should have any type of history you take, whether you're looking at a Christian view of it in the Bible or you're in a history class. Get the real stuff. In the Ark, they have dinosaurs. They show dinosaurs being transported in the Ark. People are like, oh, well, dinosaurs aren't real. There's bones, people. They find bones. Those are real. And why people would think that if this God is so great and he made the world, he made everything, he couldn't have made this happen. He couldn't have made dinosaurs? Like, why are you limiting your God to that kind of thinking? I don't understand why people think the way they do. But you got to go see the Ark. I'm not getting any promotion or any commission from this, but you need to go see it because it is pretty awesome. Like I said, if you're religious, you'll probably get a whole different aspect. But as somebody who is science-based, I felt like it was amazing. It was portrayed very well, very realistic, and just to see the workings of the Ark. These people were in this Ark for way longer than 40 days and 40 nights, which I didn't realize. That is how long it rained. But you got to think about the earth was covered in water, and then the water goes away, and that doesn't just take overnight. You know how it is when it rains in your yard and you got a mud puddle. It doesn't just go away in seconds. It takes time to absorb into the earth, to evaporate, and all the different things that happens through science where water goes after it rains. And my hair is just going to fight with me today. Everything's fighting with me today. But anyways, I got off on the Ark. You need to go see it because it is amazing. No matter who you are, just to stand beside it and look up at it. Wow. It's spectacular. The engineering for that time and age and how awesome that was done. So that's definitely something you need to put on your to-do list. I've not read the entire Bible. I've read a lot of the Bible. And like I said, this is just continuing on. It is a great book of history. I'm not discounting the Bible by any means. I still have a Bible. I still have made references to the Bible for different things. I take it for what it is. To me, it is a book of history. It is the standard for religion, Christian religion. I do believe that stuff happened. I mean, I don't discount it. I think that if you discount science as being part of the Bible and a supernatural element to it, that you're missing out, because it is a very awesome book of history and it should definitely be something that is explored. I think that it is a reference guide too. I think the Bible is a reference guide that isn't necessarily something that should be followed to the T. Why I say that is because this is a book that was written by man. Humans go throughout years and they make history books and they do different things and they change it. They change the translation of the Bible. Everybody's like, oh, this is the original. This is the only one to read. But sometimes people don't understand it. Me being one of them. I never understood the King James Version. I couldn't even read it, read the sentence and even understand what the hell they were talking about. So then I found a new translation and I was able to understand with my simpler mind what they are saying and what they're trying to portray. This throughout history. Can you imagine how the Bible's going to be referenced and things are going to be said and things are going to be taught 2,000 years from now? So that is just something, that you need to take with yourself and your religion and just decide what the importance of it is to you and what you need to do. Sometimes intuition is a big thing and how you feel about the different aspects. So, as we talked about religion, of course, like always, I'm going to wander off and talk about 15 million different subjects and maybe go on to something else. But I hope that you understand that I am a spiritual person. I do believe that religion has made a positive and a negative effect on my life as a trauma-based person. And I do feel like that I don't necessarily need an organized religion to continue on my path of what I think is my meaning and my purpose. So if you are someone that does, that is awesome. I think that is awesome, and I don't have any ups or downs for what you want to do. I just have to do what is best for myself, and that is all I can do. I still will go to church with family, friends, and help support children, grandchildren in the past that they decide to go into. But as far as for me, I need to do what is best for me and my mental health and what is lined up with my morals. I hope everybody has a great Friday. I'm sorry that this is so mixed up. You're hearing dog sounds, you're hearing kitty sounds, you're hearing all the sounds because I'm not in my studio. I'm just sitting in my kitchen. But hopefully next time we will cover the subject and I will be closer to getting back into my studio. If not, I'm having the podcast anyways, no matter where we need to set up. If you have subjects that you want to talk about, please leave me a message. Send me a message if you don't want people to see what you want to hear about or talk about, because I've got a big list and I can add to that list. If it's something that's really important to you and you want me to talk about it or talk about a different aspect of it, maybe a different angle, please let me know that. And I can research that and look that up and then give you my perspective as well of someone who is trauma-based. I hope you guys have a great weekend and be kind to each other.